Is this going to blow up the paper, gold, and silver markets? Well, hello there, my friends and fellow Arcadians. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics. And yes, as you probably can see in my background, I am recording live from Mexico tonight. So did make it down here safely. And thank you for everyone who checked in to see how it was going. Tonight, to dig in, I know it's been a couple days since a video, and there's plenty of Basel III talk going around. Are the bankers really going to pull the plug on the fractional reserve gold and silver market? Well, that is what we're going to dig into tonight. And before we get started, a quick word from the sponsor that is bringing us tonight's show, which in this case would be Kuya Silver, who is building the next high margin silver mining company in Peru, and run by David Stein, who you have seen on the show quite a few times. And as you can see, the company highlights, they have the high grade silver, low capex, past producer, and experienced management. And that's really why we have the folks who are running these companies come on the show, because I chose not to become a licensed legal financial broker, but at least let you hear from these people directly, hear what they're doing, and then you can research further. It makes sense to you, but also might add, Kuya just had a recent financing that went quite well and sold out within a couple of hours. And along the lines with another silver executive I spoke with recently, who mentioned that he's been getting calls from generalist money as well into the silver sector. So interesting to see how that is building, especially in the face of the coming Basel III. I guess only a couple of weeks away from that June 28th date now. And that is what we're going to dig into tonight, where you see on the Sunday open, silver pretty flat. Of course, you know, maybe they're just controlling the price and volatility, the banks are tonight, ahead of this big announcement. And I guess the short version, is this going to blow up the paper, gold, and silver markets? Well, for those, I know I have some critics who say sometimes I go on tangents and don't get directly to the point. So if anyone wants the quick answer, I don't know. But I will say that as this has developed, now for the longer, more exploratory answer, it's starting to seem like it at least could be possible. And in this video, we will lay out why. And perhaps before getting to any of the actual news developments, we're hearing a lot out of Russia, some interesting columns from Hugo Salinas Price, who is down here in Mexico, and actually I may be able to get in touch with, which would be nice. But I mean, even aside from the things that are happening, which again is not enough to say that it is definitely happening, but a lot of the signs that you might expect before something like that were rolled out. But we'll put that aside for a second, and just the degree to which this has to end sometime. And I get all the comments, all right, the manipulation is going to go on forever. The banks are all powerful and mighty. And there's truth to that. By all means, it's been going on for 41 years in the face of the CFTC, the price spike in 2011. So yes, I completely factor that in, that there is a great base of power, yet reminds me a lot of 2006, 2007, the way people talked about mortgages. They didn't think they were coming down. And I don't know, I mean, if there's going to be a mainstream public warning. I don't think Ben Bernanke or Jerome Powell is going to warn you before it happens. But just like the London gold pool eventually came to an end, there was the drain on the gold. And we've seen that happening, especially since the last financial crisis. Is it coming to an end on June 28th? It's at least plausible to me that it could be. They could well be at the point where they don't have any more metal to pump out there. LBMA told you that. Ed Moy of the U.S. Mint told you that. Jim Rickards told you that. A whole bunch of other folks that are inside the bank or that part of the system. And I don't hear many people comment on this, but it's something that I factor in a lot, where we also have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. We get a couple of clues here and there, but I find it's helpful to remember you're dealing with sociopaths. These aren't the people that you trust or you can count on. And I've always fully expected that whenever this does finally unravel, we'll see infighting, people turning on each other. It's what bankers do. And, it's kind of like a mafia when they can just get the money from the people, it's good. But hey, when times get tough, we'll see if they end up duking it out. Again, this is just speculation, although not completely baseless, as we will get into. Also, along those lines, I would never rule out, hey, maybe there's a Democrat that wants to screw a Republican or vice versa, and someone uses this as the opportunity or means to do so. And with some of the events that we'll cover in a moment that are leading up to that, by all means, I don't know what the percentage is, but certainly it seems at least that it's possible. Now, that could be June 28th, or maybe they say, we need another 6 months, or we need another 2 years. I imagine they'll do whatever is most convenient for themselves and not for the people, unfortunate as that may be. But anyway, I just think that, I hear some people dismiss it out of hand, like, oh, well, they're definitely not doing it. And I certainly would not agree with that. I'm a student of probabilities, so I think there is a growing chance that something could happen. And with the theory out of the way, let's look at some of the actual data points. Did mention Hugo Salinas Price. I'm sure a lot of you saw this article. GATA and others sent it out. Mentioned how on April 6th, there was an announcement, Putin poised to set out vision for future in dramatic speech and what allies say will be the world's most important political event. And there was not really any clear follow through in terms of what he was going to say yet, although there have been some signs. But let's take a look first in Hugo's opinion. There's only one explanation for this odd situation. Putin was threatening to restore gold backing for the Russian ruble and for the Chinese yuan. And this scared the living daylight out of the BIS, the Bank for International Settlements, which caved into pressure from Russia and its ally, China. Now, he says in his opinion, I don't know what else he knows or other conversations he has, so hard for me to say yes or no to that. But is that at least a possible scenario that, as an option trader, I would not rule out? Absolutely. And along the lines of whether it's infighting within the deep state or here, China or Russia saying, hey, we're done with it. We don't want to play this game anymore. And I've always thought, really for the last 10, maybe not always, but for the last 10 years or so, that China or Russia could end this anytime they choose. And I get people say, well, they don't want to do that because they're going to lose money. That's a sunk cost to me at this point. That money's not coming back. The U.S. is bankrupt. So there's some point at which I always imagined or would think that China and Russia would say, all right, we know we're not getting that back. Let's cut our losses now. And Putin's certainly given a lot of signs. I mean, if you actually listen to what the guy says over the last couple of years, then as we will see, followed up by action. So we'll finish here. Nobody knows how high the price will go after June 28th. Seems like Hugo seems pretty confident that he sees it going through. I know Alistair McLeod is also pretty confident. Worth checking out. He did an interview on Dunnigan Kaiser's Reluctant Preppers where he seemed to think it's happening. And Alistair will actually be on the show Tuesday. So it'll be good to check in with him, get some more clarification on why he does believe that. And he was asked several times, could it get delayed? You know, we've all heard these things. Usually they get pushed back. And he felt pretty confident that it would be going through on June 28th. So look forward to checking in with him and seeing more about that. But as a little background of how we got to this point and why Putin and Russia don't seem too happy with the way things are going, let's review a little bit of the recent events here, starting with Russia lashing out after Biden called him a killer. So here,
Well, tonight, echoes of the Cold War as a feud has erupted between the leaders of two nuclear superpowers.
This little conditioning, get people thinking we have a new Cold War coming up. That's always positive.
Biden thinks Vladimir Putin is a killer, and the Russian president is responding. CBS's Ed O'Keefe reports now from the White House.
A dangerous war of words between the two presidents tonight. The Kremlin and Vladimir Putin hitting back at President Biden for calling him a killer.
So you know Vladimir Putin, you think he's a killer?
Mm-hmm. I do.
Responding today in Moscow, Putin said,
Кто как обзывается, тот так и называется.
It takes one to know one. Calling the relationship bad and under the threat of collapse, the Kremlin also pulled its ambassador back to Moscow for emergency meetings. The White House said the president has no regrets for his comment.
Let's hear what Circle Back Saki has to say.
No, the president gave a direct answer to a direct question.
The administration.
All right. Well, that sounds like that's going to be a fun meeting. And certainly, as you may have seen earlier this week, if we can get good old CNBC to reload there, Russia tells U.S. to expect uncomfortable signals ahead of Putin-Biden summit. Now, what on earth that means was left a little vague here. It was beefing up its western border militarily. Comments came a day after Joe Biden said he would press Vladimir Putin to respect human rights when the two leaders meet in Geneva on June 16th. Joe's telling people how to respect human rights is, wow, something I will hold my tongue on tonight. The Americans must assume that a number of signals from Moscow will be uncomfortable for them, including in the coming days. Now, what that means, again, was left a bit unclear, but here we see some other signals that actually have taken place. Russia cuts dollar holdings from wealth fund amid sanctions. Seems like they're not enjoying being sanctioned. Will eliminate the dollar from its oil fund to reduce vulnerability to the West sanctions just 2 weeks after Putin holds his first meeting with Joe Biden. And at the end of all the rhetoric and the things politicians say, usually look at what's happening with the money, and that tells you what is really going on. Interesting, even Reuters, which I've come to associate as a bit of a banking mouthpiece of sorts, they were reporting Kremlin dollar dump is economic inflatable hammer. Interesting headline, although you hear, but I guess it's typical of Reuters, Moscow has blown an economic raspberry at Washington. Well, that's not so typical. I've not heard that phrase in my financial career before, of blowing an economic raspberry. But Russia's $186 billion national wealth fund is exiting greenback-denominated investments. It's a political signal to Washington, which is banning its banks from buying ruble-denominated Russian state debt from June 14th. It's also consistent with the Kremlin's ambition of undermining the greenback status as the world reserve currency. Now, of course, Reuters says, yet it won't hurt Washington because some 7 trillion of the world's central banks are held in dollars, more than half that total, which could be, certainly could be accurate. Yet, I mean, Russia, China seems on board with this. The U.S. is sanctioning Iran, Europe. I mean, at some point, you would think these are some countries that have some clout in the world, but anyway, Reuters doesn't seem phased. But if we look over here on Russia Today, Russia ditches over $1 billion of U.S. government bonds as they continue diversifying investments. I mean, if you take a step back and don't just look at the one piece, but the whole bigger pattern, you see this going on in other countries. Policy of de-dollarization showing no signs of slowing down. So, I mean, it's not like Hugo Salinas Price is making this up out of left field, whether that's exactly what is their next step. I guess we'll find out in a couple of weeks. But since that time, Russia has continued to focus on relying less on the world's most popular reserve currency. Last year, it was revealed that the first quarter of 2020 saw the share of the dollar in trade between Beijing and Moscow fall below 50% for the first time. So I guess Reuters can say, hey, it's a small chunk. I don't know, like, what other country has to get involved before this is meaningful. And here was that first story that Mr. Price referenced. Putin poised to set out vision for the future in a dramatic speech in what allies say will be world's most important political event. He is reportedly preparing to give a major address in which he will fire the starting pistol on a new era and set out a different vision for the future of his country. And the quote from chairwoman of the Russian Senate: "This will be a message for a new age. But at the same time, as always, current issues will be addressed, focuses will be defined, and direct instructions will be given." So again, the rest of the details are being worked out. Now, what the heck it is that they're talking about, obviously, as I said, is quite vague. But to me, is it at least possible that Hugo Salinas' price could be right? I'm not going to put a percentage on that at the moment, but I would not sell that put at zero. And we'll just find out in a couple of weeks and keep looking at data points. But as I just think about it and piece together how something like this might unfold, like I said, I think it's possible. Of course, in terms of other signs of the apocalypse, here, this is a couple weeks ago, but JP Morgan says investors are ditching Bitcoin. They are returning to gold. Unfortunately, no comment on silver in that one. Again, here, global food prices post biggest jump in a decade. Fortunately for the US, those are not included in the CPI inflation metric, but nonetheless, these things are happening now. And I wish I could tell you the exact day that silver and gold move. I don't know that, but it's like we're not back in the 80s anymore where it's one day, watch out. So we will see if it is this June coming for a big move. I do think we'll see it sooner than later. So anyway, a couple last quick stories before we wrap up. Going to keep this one on the shorter side tonight, but did have some news from another one of our sponsors, Silver Elephant, to conduct preliminary economic assessment on the Gibellini vanadium project. Vanadium has been one of the best performing metals in 2021, and you can find out more. We'll have the link to that in the description field below. So some more progress with Silver Elephant that you can read about there. And also a note from Silver Viper, who closed a $4.5 million first tranche of a private placement, which I believe ended up being oversubscribed. I think you guys know that I am a big fan of what Silver Viper is doing, which again is not legal financial advice, but certainly one of the companies I would say that if you're looking for silver exposure and leverage to silver, I would certainly suggest looking into further to seeing if that is a good fit for you or running it by your financial advisor. Because especially whenever the silver price starts to move, I mean, certainly if you get in good companies, it is a good thing. I mean, probably anything with silver in the name will move like we saw with the cryptos, but certainly Silver Viper is a company to keep an eye on. And lastly, before I wrap up for tonight, I wanted to mention this coming Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, I will be hosting another options call. We're going to do this one privately first and probably repost on the channel later, but had a few ideas of how I will be approaching the situation with Basel III on the 28th and some of the other dates in between now and then. And that's one of the things that is fun about option trading, because it allows you to be really precise with how you approach something. So that will be Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. If you're already on the options list, you will be notified automatically. If you're not on the options list or you're not sure, the link to sign up is in the description field below. That is a free call, and we'll be taking option questions and sharing how I look at some things. So if you'd like to join us Tuesday at 8 p.m. and talk about some of these things, that is where I will be. So with that said, I thank you all for being here. Again, I'd like to thank everybody who's watching or subscribed, who's been a part of this, especially now as I'm in this beautiful location here in Mexico, which is coming into my life at just the perfect time. It was the right time to leave Austin and leave the United States, and just the nature and beauty of being here has been really amazing. And it's just the way my life has developed. I feel so grateful for being a part of this and the way this whole thing has developed in the past year, and being able to share what I'm seeing and meet a lot of the people who are watching and make a lot of really good friends here. And I just thank you all for being a part of it. So with that said, going to wrap up for tonight. Hope you're having a beautiful weekend. Look forward to being with you again this week. A lot of good content coming. So hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and I will see you again tomorrow.